I'm Matt the Jerk here with another Free Agent Friday. Today we're going to be talking about the AFC North. We have a handful of free agents to talk about, and we're going to get into it. So first I want to go ahead and mention, obviously the fact that we have the Super Bowl coming up. So we have the final matchup confirmed. We have the LA Rams versus Cincinnati Bengals. It's fun to think back. I mentioned this in my article about the odds of these teams coming into the preseason. So at some point throughout the preseason, I don't know exactly when these odds were taken, but the Rams were 12-1 odds to win the Super Bowl. Pretty fair. I think they were in the top 5, maybe top 4 for teams projected to make it and win the Super Bowl. But the Bengals, they were 150-1 odds at some point in the preseason. I believe that was the third worst odds. So it's really amazing, to look back and see how things have changed. And, obviously you can go through the full season. And as we were about halfway through the season, we started to think, well, obviously those odds are changing. They have a better chance than most thought. But it's funny to go back to before season started and see where we're at and where we're at now. So we're going to talk about the Bengals today, and that's one of the main reasons I did the AFC North, just because the Bengals are in it and they're in the Super Bowl. So one notable free agent to talk about this year for the Bengals, and that is CJ Uzomah. So tight end, not really a big name. Actually, a lot of these players I'm going to talk about today probably aren't the biggest names, but we're going to talk about them nonetheless. So he's 29 years old. Talked about not so much because he's going to be a dominant dynasty value next year, really even the big dynasty asset, but just because he's owned 52% of leagues. So honestly, a little bit higher than I would have thought, just from a $6 million tight end. And he finished as tight end 26 in 2021. So $6 million, tight end 26, really not what you think about when you think of a 50% owned tight end. Either way, I think he's a better real life football player, especially for a tight end as compared to a fantasy player. His ownership's going to decrease. There's no doubt about it. He's probably going to make over $6 million this coming year. And expect him to be dropped in a lot of leagues, and I would probably drop him if I owned him as well. Pittsburgh Steelers, two 25-year-old wide receivers. We have Juju, Smith-Schuster, and James Washington. Amazing when I wrote this. I think I might have known this at one point, but maybe I forgot, is that James Washington is actually older than Juju Smith-Schuster. So a real testament to how young Schuster was when he entered the league and how short of a time it took him to become a big household name. Anyway, unrestricted free agent for him, 2022. He's going to be about $12 million per year. Wouldn't surprise me in the least if that extends closer to $15 million a year, just given what he's done, his age, and he can really bring wide receiver one talent to a team that needs it. There's a few that I have in mind. And kind of the same for James Washington. The 3 teams that I have in mind are the Bears, the Chiefs, and the Saints. Obviously for the Chiefs, it depends on Michael Thomas' situation, but maybe the Saints. He could be, they're number 1 for the Bears. I don't necessarily think about the Chiefs. You got Tyreek Hill there and Travis Kelce. But when you're thinking Bears, I think that's definitely a possibility that Schuster could become the number 1 there pretty quickly. James Washington, so he had a very low cap hit last year, $1.1 million. He's going to be making about $6 to $7 million in this next contract he's going to make. So I don't think the Steelers are going to hold on to him just for the fact that he's going to be their wide receiver 3 at best, maybe their wide receiver 4. That's just too much money to pay for a player like that. So while I like the player, I like James Washington, I just don't think the Steelers are going to be able to keep him. He could still be a value at $6 million depending on where he goes. If he goes to one of those teams, Bears, Chiefs, Saints, another team, maybe not so much the Dolphins, but Bears, Chiefs, Saints are the big ones that I've targeted for these 2 receivers, where one of them will probably end up going. And then I just want to mention Dwayne Haskins. I didn't write him as one of my free agents to fully talk about, but I just want to mention him. So Haskins, as scary as it sounds, is my odds-on favorite to be the Steelers starter in 2022. I don't think he will be, but the reason I'm putting him there is just because we have no idea who it's going to be. So only other quarterback I think at the moment is Mason Rudolph. It's likely the Steelers are going to explore quarterback options in free agency, probably in the draft too. I don't know what round they're going to be taking, quarterback in, but odds are they're going to be looking at it. So I don't think he's going to start week 1, but if I had to pick one right now, he's going to be the option. And like I said, he's not officially on my free agent list, but just keep that name in the back of your mind as free agency goes through, because he is going to find a landing spot. He will get a contract. Baltimore Ravens, 2 Asian running backs, Latavius Murray and Devonta Freeman. So Latavius Murray is 3 years older than Freeman. He's 32, believe it or not. So very old for a running back. He's likely getting close to the end of his career. No real surprise there. I don't think last season was his final season, but I don't really see a chance that he gets more than a single year offer because of that age. He'll be in his year 33 season on a multiple year deal. Don't see that. You don't see that very often, especially from a running back he's been good. He's been efficient in the opportunities gotten, but he just hasn't been the number one running back at any point in his career. So I think something about $3 million is fair market value for Murray. And then Freeman, kind of the same situation, only he's 3 years younger. So 29-year-old running back, found new life in Baltimore. Wasn't the most efficient, wasn't the most high scoring, but he was a very good value, actually. He finished, he had a little more than $1 million is what he made, but he was able to get 150 fantasy points. And that put him in the top 20 for Dynasty dollar for fantasy point. And, that's our metric here at Dynasty Owner. So a very efficient in terms of value season that he had. I wouldn't expect anything similar, though, in 2022, especially since, his new team is totally up in the air. We have no idea where he's going to be landing. And finally, the Cleveland Browns. 2 players, 2 25-year-olds, David Njoku and Dearness Johnson. So let's talk about Njoku. Pretty disappointing career, at least from a fantasy standpoint. I don't want to say disappointing career from a real life football standpoint, but in terms of what dynasty owners, fantasy owners wanted when they drafted Njoku, when they saw that he was drafted in 2017, it just really hasn't come to fruition. So 5 NFL seasons, a little less than 1,800 receiving yards, only 3 touchdowns per year. I know the tight ends, usually do a lot more than just the offensive production, but even still, it's a little disappointing to see those numbers from Njoku. I was thinking a lot more of him when he was drafted. I think he's going to move on from the Browns. He'll make right around $6 million, close to what he made last year. Dearness Johnson, big splash. You saw him make in 2021 in a couple of games, 2-3 games that Chubb and Hunt were out. So we know that Chubb, we already know that he signed a multi-year contract worth over $12 million per year. No surprise there. We know that Hunt's still there. I'm torn on what the Browns should do. So my heart tells me they should bring him back just from how he played. I mean, he really gave everything in those couple of games when he was the man. But my brain tells me that it's probably not likely. There's very few third-string running backs in the NFL that make over $2 million, and that's exactly what he's probably going to want to make, given what he showed in the few games that he started. So even if the Browns wanted to use a tender on him, it's still going to be worth over $2 million. So I really don't see it. I hope he lands on a good team where he could be a true number 2 running back, change of pace back, even a goal line back. I think he'd be good at, but I don't think it's going to be Cleveland. Just too many mouths to feed with Chubb and Hunt. And that's pretty much it. We had, what about 7 or 8 players to talk about today? So a little bit lower than usual, but don't fear. We're going to talk about every player. We're going to talk about every team, every division, and I'll be here with you all through the off season. So I appreciate everybody watching, listening. Take care. And